Okay, we're going to go on to rabbits. Rabbits cause a lot of problems because they like to eat anything that you don't want them to eat. And they feed on anything that's tender, and it's hard to trap them outside the winter because they can eat so much other stuff, you won't trap them with a bait. And trapping, so for the squirrel and the rabbit now, there is no legal bait. Now, if you have a license and you're outside the city limits, you can dispatch them with a firearm. If you have a license to take squirrels from game and parks or a license to take rabbits from game and parks and you're outside the city limits, you can dispatch these animals with a firearm legally. You cannot dispatch them in the city limits, not even with a pellet gun, not even with a bow and arrow, not even with a slingshot. That's against Omaha, Grand Island, and Lincoln's ordinance. No projectile. No BB gun, no pellet gun, no anything. That's the law. Okay? So you're in the city limits, you're stuck box trapping and euthanization. Okay, so these guys, the rabbits, if you box trap them in the winter, you can do it fairly easy because there's no food around and they're active in the winter and you want to get them before about March. That's when they start to reproduce. And rabbits reproduce about every 35 days from March till October. They become gravid and mate 48 hours after giving birth, all summer long. And we're talking about litters of 6 to 8. Rabbits, the cottontail, does not dig a hole. Rabbits only dig a form, which means they dig a loop underground. The female then pulls all the fur off of her mammary glands, lines this hole, has the babies, puts fur over it, puts grass over it, and then she leaves them all day long. She's not abandoning them. She'll go at night, if no one's around, and lay over the hole. And she does that for about a week to 2 weeks, and then that's it. And the babies are on their own. Because she's already gravid again, starting to get ready for her next litter. Now, that means a lot of rabbits. But only one rabbit out of all those litters will make it to maturity. So there's only about one out of every 30 to 40 baby rabbits actually make it to maturity. That's still a lot because there's a lot being born. Everything likes to eat baby rabbits. A friend of mine who's a biologist calls baby rabbits the Snickers bars of the wildlife community. Because you name it, they like to eat them. Okay? They're one of the favorite foods of everything. Now, you can't use poisons, again, on rabbits. And so if you try to get them in a trap in the winter, it's fairly easy. As soon as everything starts greening up, which is like today here in Lancaster County, it'll be hard because that snowdrop thing, that little plant, it looked very succulent to me. The rabbits will go right for that. So anything that's coming up now is food. So you can still trap them in a cage trap, but what you're going to do is find out where they're hiding, under a tree, or maybe they're going under a deck, and have a cage that has 2 openings, put a piece of burlap over it, and when they go to run out at night, both doors shut, and then they're in the trap. So you're getting them, and it looks like a dark tunnel. So you use the cage traps that have 2 doors. And you put a piece of burlap over it and put it where you know they're running. And then they'll run, because they see something out there, their food, and they'll run through it, but they can't get out. And then you'll have them trapped. If you want to fence, keep them out, you can do that. Well, let me hit the damage first. One thing you can tell rabbit damage from deer damage and other damage, a rabbit is not a rodent, it's a lagomorph, so it has 2 big incisors, front teeth, and 2 peg incisors behind it. So whenever it chews anything, it leaves a little thing, a tab there. So that's how you know it's rabbit damage. And they can do this in the winter, and they can also girdle. But here, the two teeth are big, and these marks are going to be a 1/4 inch. So you know it's not the vole or the ground squirrel. 16th, 1/8, 1/4. You can even take evergreens. You want, well, how did the rabbit get that high? Well, I'm sure the snow cover was that high. So this is the fence, and it's 1/4 inch hardware cloth, and it's around this complete 1/4 acre, and it's up above the ground. You don't need this top on part. I put that for a different animal, but it just needs to go up 20 inches and in the ground 4 inches. Rabbits don't dig deeper than that form, 6 inches deep, so they can't get underneath that. A form, yeah, that's where they have their babies. It's called a rabbit form. Oh, that's called hardware cloth. Yeah, it's 1/4 inch galvanized hardware cloth. And I had an acre property, actually it was a little more than an acre, and I had a chain link fence all around the acre, 260 foot by 130 foot by 260 foot. And I just ran this between the poles and the chain link. It took me 1 weekend. And where I dug in the ground, I put gravel so I wouldn't have to weed eat. And I had no rabbits ever got into the yard. And where my gate was, I just poured concrete and closed the gate on the concrete when it was moist, and it formed right into the concrete, and they couldn't get around the gate. 100% rabbit proof, 1 weekend's of work. You can easily exclude them. The other thing is, if you just want to put a fence around an area, you can do that. Because again, they don't dig down. So all the rabbits here, cottontails and the jackrabbits, they just have that dip. Now, there is rabbits that in Europe that actually dig holes. So Bugs Bunny had to be European because he had a long hole when he had a couch and a TV in there. So Bugs Bunny was European. He wasn't a cottontail. But that's the best exclusion for him. And again, trapping. And if you just want to do the tree with that same hardware cloth, you want to make it loose around the tree, same thing. About 4 inches in the ground, 20 inches up. And that works out great because they sell this in 24-inch rolls by 1,000 feet if you want it. And there's the trap I would use. That's the single trap if you put food in it. If you're using it to catch them, you want the ones that have this door on both sides. And you put a piece of burlap over it so it looks like a dark tunnel. Because you're not putting any bait in it if you're using it for 2 openings. Keep on going here. Any questions about rabbits? Go ahead and send them in. We do have cases that were mainly in Sarpy County last year of rabbits with a cancer called Papillomavirus, I think. And it doesn't transfer to any other animals but domesticated rabbits. And it has these black horns that come out of the face. And that's how we got this jackalope myth. So there is a disease, a cancer that causes these. They get to be about this long, and they're black horns that come out of the face and head of cottontail rabbits.
The next question is what do you put in the trap to attract the rabbits to catch them?
Okay, if you only can do this when there's nothing growing, like before March. I always use a carrot, romaine lettuce. After March, you put nothing and hope you got them in a travel with the 2 holes.
That's the last question so far.
Okay, we got one question here. Yes, sir.
I can't grow tulips because something is mowing this down to the ground. Is that the rabbits or?
Okay, the question is, I can't grow tulips because something mows them down in the spring. It is most likely rabbits. Rabbits love tulips. They love all that stuff that comes up early. Crocus, you name it. Now, some people say if you plant marigolds between the tulips, that rabbit, they eat everything I've seen. If they're hungry, they will eat it. If it's very fleshy, like tulips, or some of those early plants that have really fleshy leaves, they like those the best. So a fence around it, or get rid of that rabbit. Any other questions from the audience here? Okay.